Alright. Alright. So, I was hoping to have my computer be up and running properly and have better lighting and all this and starting off my YouTube proper. But, looks like that's not an option, and I'm tired of sitting on my ass, so. Something I wanted to start off talking about is, uh, I hear often people sort of demonize masculinity these days, and there's a lot of talk of patriarchy and various things, and not that patriarchy does not exist or has not existed historically, but there's, I think, this real deliberately ignorant concept of masculinity that is being pushed forward, uh, that kind of reverse engineers. It starts with a theory about patriarchy, and then kind of they go backwards into history to find evidence to support the theory they've already come to. As somebody who enjoys like history and the evolution of mankind and the like for its own sake, as well as somebody who suffers from complex post-traumatic stress disorder. Turn that off. Sorry, my AC. Uh, Somebody who suffers from complex post-traumatic stress disorder. I found this, and I'm very interested in different cultures as well. And I've found cross cultures, cross throughout history, there's a real tie to masculine expression and trauma, and I'm talking about the core of masculine expression. I'm not talking about vanity masculinity, where, for example, oh, is your hair long or is it short, and what kind of clothes do you wear, what color, that kind of stuff. That's all vanity. That's like, that's fluff. I'm talking about the core concept of masculinity, which cross-culturally comes down to male sacrifice. And a lot of the, whether you go to, North Africa, the Middle East, Asia, Southeast Asia, South Africa, pretty much any culture that, and look through the traditional kind of aspects of masculinity and the way it, the way it manifests, there's a lot in common with complex post-traumatic stress disorder, or CPTSD, which is what I have, and it's something that I've sort of come to realize more recently. And it makes a lot of sense from an evolutionary perspective, and we'll get into that in a bit. But, like, for example, and I kind of came to this realization watching Khadija, I can't pronounce that name properly, Mbowe, I think. She's a more leftist YouTuber. She had a video called For the Boys. I'm myself not really a leftist. I'm more my own thing, but I try to spread out and look at everything. But and a lot of what she described as toxic masculinity I found very interesting, because it very strongly correlated to side effects of trauma, PTSD specifically complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And some of those things, like intimacy problems, feelings of worthlessness, and that can lead to self-destructive behavior, as well as issues with emotion regulations and relationship problems, feeling guilty, anger, and a lot of the ways that toxic masculinity, or in reality often masculinity, we can drop the toxic, manifests is in this way that is extremely familiar to me with my traumatic symptoms, and this kind of emotion suppression, and tendency towards anger, and kind of emotional coldness and distance, because you get all this shit going on in your head, and you kind of need to not feel it in order to be useful to others. And I find that concept of male sacrifice coinciding with, CPTSD and other sort of traumatic symptoms, sort of almost like it's a mold built around turning trauma into something that has societal benefit. Be that, the dude literally working himself to death in, East Asia, dropping dead from overwork, or the aggressive or Western approach of somebody just throwing themselves into, the line of fire with no regard for their own life. These kind of self-destructive, yet socially, in a sacrificial way, socially beneficial manifestations of masculinity. And and just how common that kind of thing is in masculinity. And it makes a lot of sense from an evolutionary perspective. The sort of traditional hunter-gatherer situation predates modern Homo sapiens. You see it not only in common with other sapiens, such as Neanderthals and the like, and but you even see it in chimpanzees. The sort of way men will go and troop up and go to the outer perimeters of territory and fight and engage in violence. And you have to think about that hunter-gatherer society, even before more endemic warfare plagued our species. While daughters got to stay with the mothers, gather, and stay closer to home and closer to safety, young boys would go out and have to kill something for the first time, right? That's a traumatic kind of experience. Those animals, it can be a very traumatic experience, your first hunt. And that kind of thing was a cultural facet of every single human tribe, and then, of course, when conflict between tribes opened up, men, due to our natural expendability, something that's cross-species and a very useful sort of strategy, group strategy, male expendability, and the fact that we have testosterone and we're more built for the physical violence and the like, and more wired for it mentally due to the effects testosterone often has, especially if you're sensitive to it. This this leads to a very traumatic upbringing. And early civilization doesn't give much relief to that. You have constant states of warfare in early, settlements and early civilizations, and the need to build walls, and, if you lose, you're pushed into slavery, and it's a very brutal thing. And that kind of shapes cultural notions of masculinity, also cultural notions of femininity, because, women in many cultures, not all, often sheltered from that, and that breeds a bit more of a less traumatized, not to say that women, obviously, especially sexual violence, often, but a sort of less traumatized or more sheltered kind of experience, which you could say leads to more innocence. And this also kind of reinforces female traditional roles, and a lot of the interesting kind of where women are almost seen as the emotional caretakers for men in a lot of societies, helping, like if the man is supposed to sacrifice, the woman's the woman's sacrifice is, well, obviously child labor and the issues in, Russian roulette of pregnancy, but also, quite especially, it is the sort of consolation of male trauma. Think of Hector's wife drawing a bath for him because he always wants a bath when he comes home from the Trojan War, right? And killing the Achaeans and stuff. And, one day he never comes home, right? That kind of repeated story that only really has come to truly stop within the last 100 years properly. I mean, it's been slowing down, but it took two world wars and two nuclear bombs to really kind of essentially make warfare no longer profitable, and that's really reshaped things. And it's an interesting thing for me to sort of come to terms with and grips with and think about as somebody who is going through these traumatic experiences. I got raped, watched people die, nearly died a few times, abusive home, got isolated, and a lot of those are just the highlight reels for before I came of age. There's I've fit very well into the masculine role by nature, not by attempt to emulate masculinity from a cultural perspective. Just naturally, I needed to kind of man up. Manning up saved my fucking life. It really did. It really did. Like, I think I would have killed myself if it weren't for me embracing self-sacrifice and the idea of living for others, and this sort of cobbled together my own kind of masculinity, and it's frustrating because this is a bit more personal. I guess it feels like I'm obsolete, I guess, in a lot of modern senses. I mean, obviously, if Yellowstone went or something along those lines, men who can just face death because you're already ready to go and sacrifice for the sake of others, it would be very useful, in that kind of extreme situation. But the sort of lie of the placebo-esque lie of civilization that we have power and control and that we're safe, and that this is a perpetual thing, it really makes someone like me not just unwanted but obsolete. And I think that's an interesting kind of thought to conceive, especially when you often see grand social changes, especially unprecedented ones, often accompanied by environmental changes, even if those are man-made environmental changes like industrial revolution, the evolution of weaponry, or the settling of into complex agricultural societies that's where misogyny and what feminists would call patriarchy really has its roots. The settling, in that sense, artificially inflated male roles and kind of it rusted away the female roles and sort of societal influence. And that's a video for another day. But I feel like I'm just at this sort of cusp where men like me are going the way of the dinosaurs. Whether that's a mistake or not, we'll see. But I think there's a lot more to think on that. But I'm kind of rambling and getting off the point of the video. And one day when I do get my computer and all that, I'm gonna make a new channel and give these the justice they deserve with, more on point presentation, as well as, more than me just sitting here in front of a shitty tablet camera, built-in camera with the shitty tablet built-in microphone. But for now, I guess we're here. And the shaping of trauma with the male role also explains, like, when is it okay to cry? When is it not okay to cry? It's not okay to cry when somebody dies during a tense situation, but it's okay to cry at a funeral, right? These kind of things. And it's all about that idea that a man needs to push down his emotions and suffer for the sake of others. And I think the reason masculinity has been eroded is not just like some... I think a lot of people in certain ideological camps want to blame it all on feminists, but I think it also has to do with how safe our modern society has gotten, where, genuine masculinity on the wavelength of trauma and self-sacrifice is not as common, and rather what you have is a more cultural masculinity, and especially vanity masculinity, where, just wanting to look like a man, which is always a problem, vanity morals, or, it's always a problem in anything, from religion to politics, activism, anything. Shallowness and not getting the deeper point of something is always kind of an issue. But I've probably been rambling on long enough, yeah. Like I said, I plan on hopefully one day getting to the point where I can make significantly higher quality videos. Right now I'm living in a fucking RV. Staring down the barrel of my life. But fuck it, gotta throw something out there. Might as well get some momentum going. It's good for me as well. But yeah, I hope this can provoke thought and conversation, meaningful thought and conversation, not ranting about feminists this or MRAs that or blah blah blah. People are so divided, and it's this whole other video about the oligarchy and how it engages in divide and conquer against the people. Anyways, yeah, look forward to more of this noise. Peace.